The offer Daniel put on the table was 31% of what the business was worth. He presented it as generosity. He used the word fair 3 times in the first 2 minutes of the conversation, which is the kind of thing that tells you what a person understands about the word. I had built the consulting practice with Daniel over 3 years. We had started it at a kitchen table with 2 clients between us and grown it to a firm with 12 consistent clients and a team of 4. We had done that work together, which is what I had always believed until the last year of it, when I began to understand what together actually meant from Daniel's perspective and what it meant from mine. His version of together was this: Daniel managed the finances and kept the client contracts and attended the strategy meetings and made the decisions about direction. My version of together was this: I did the work that justified the client relationships, built the operational processes that allowed us to scale, and developed the reputation that had attracted most of our growth in years 2 and 3. These 2 versions had coexisted for a long time without being named. It is possible to run a business on unexamined assumptions about who owns what for longer than it should be possible. The assumptions hold as long as the outcome is good enough for everyone. When they stop holding is when someone decides the outcome could be better for them specifically. In the beginning, Daniel and I had been genuinely equal in the ways that mattered. He brought the financial knowledge. I brought the operational instinct. He opened doors, I made sure what was behind those doors was worth walking through. The first client we landed together was a referral from one of his contacts, and I still remember the Tuesday afternoon we sat at his kitchen table and realized we might actually be building something real. That version of us was good. The version of us at year 3 was different. Not suddenly, and not with one decisive incident. It was gradual. The way erosion is gradual, you don't notice it happening until you look back and realize the landscape has changed. The moves Daniel made in the year before his offer were methodical and slow. He stopped introducing me to new clients. When I was in client meetings, he began presenting my analysis as strategic decisions he had made. He restructured 2 of my key relationships so that the primary contact was now him, with me in a supporting role. He raised the question of equity redistribution twice, in the framing of fairness, suggesting that his role had grown relative to mine and that the structure should reflect that. I sat with each of these moves and I documented them. Not immediately, not in anger, but over time, building a clear record of the pattern. I also had coffee, separately and quietly, with 3 of our longest-standing clients, the ones who had come to us initially through relationships I had built, the ones who consistently called me when there was a problem that needed real judgment. These were not strategic conversations. They were just the ordinary maintenance of relationships I had been responsible for. I simply made sure those relationships were warm and current. When Daniel made the formal offer, I was ready. Not ready in an adversarial sense, I had no interest in a protracted negotiation or a legal contest. I was ready in the simpler sense of having decided what I was going to do and having taken the preparatory steps to do it. I told him I would take the offer. I told him I needed 2 weeks before the transfer was complete. He was pleased and a little surprised that I hadn't pushed back harder, which told me he had expected resistance and had built his opening number accordingly. He was not as good at this as he thought he was. During the 2 weeks, I had one more round of conversations with the clients. I didn't recruit anyone. I didn't make any offers or ask for any commitments. I told each of them that I was leaving the firm and starting an independent practice, gave them my new contact information, and told them I had genuinely valued the work we had done together. I kept the conversations professional and brief. I let people draw their own conclusions. I closed the transfer on a Friday. I had lunch with Daniel afterward, at his suggestion, because he wanted to mark the occasion with something that felt collegial. I was pleasant throughout. I wished him well and meant it in the limited way you can mean something when you are saying it to someone who has treated you as an asset to be acquired at minimum cost. The first few months of my independent practice were harder than I expected. Not impossible, I had 3 clients from the beginning, 2 of whom had followed me within the first month, a third within 90 days. But building alone is different from building with a structure behind you, even a flawed one, and I had underestimated the weight of doing everything myself. I kept careful accounts. I did good work. I was patient with the timeline. I reminded myself, in the months when things were slower than I wanted them to be, that what I was building had my name on it in a way the firm never had. Every client I brought in, every piece of work I delivered, every relationship I deepened, it was mine entirely. There is a different quality of ownership in that. A different kind of accountability. When things went wrong, they went wrong on my watch and I fixed them. When things went well, they went well because of what I had done. That clarity, which I had not fully had before, turned out to matter to me more than I had anticipated. A year after I left, I heard from one of the clients who had stayed with the firm that things were difficult. Daniel had lost 2 of the larger accounts within 6 months, the clients who had been mine most directly. He had replaced them with new business that was smaller and less stable. He had also lost one of the 4 team members, which had created gaps in the operational capacity I had built and which he had apparently struggled to fill. By the time I had been independent for 18 months, I had 9 clients. My revenue was 90% of what I had been making with the firm. My overhead was lower. My margins were better. The work was better. And I was, for the first time in several years, looking forward to Monday mornings. He reached out once, about a year after I left, to ask whether I would consider returning as a contractor. I told him I was fully committed to my own practice and that I didn't have bandwidth. The conversation was short. There was nothing hostile in it. I thought about that call for a while afterward. Not because I was tempted, I wasn't, but because of what it revealed about how he had understood the situation. He had not understood it. He had spent a year watching the firm lose the things I had built, and his conclusion had been that I might be available to rebuild them for him on a contractor's fee. That is not a reading of the situation I would have arrived at. But it is a very clear picture of what he thought the firm's problems were and what he thought the solution was. He was not entirely wrong about the problem. He was entirely wrong about my interest in the solution. Building something on your own terms, after years of building something that was never fully yours, changes what you are willing to accept. It also changes what you are willing to go back to. The offer he was making, return as a contractor, help us rebuild what you built before, on a structure that still belongs to someone else, was not an offer I had any interest in. I had learned, in 18 months of doing it myself, that the difficulty of doing it myself was worth the price of owning what I built. That is not a conclusion available to someone who hasn't been on both sides of it. He hadn't. I had. I want to be precise about what I took from the experience of the buyout, because I think people misunderstand the choice I made. Taking 31% of the value I had helped create is not the same as being treated fairly. But the thing Daniel didn't understand is that what he was actually buying was his version of the business, the version with my name removed from the client relationships, my methods removed from the operations, my judgment removed from the decisions. He thought he was buying me out of something. He was actually releasing me into something better. The 31% was the price of a clean start. It was worth every cent. If you've ever taken a low offer and known exactly what it was actually buying you, tell me in the comments. Subscribe to Dark Karma for a new story every Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday.